Time is 10:04, 29th of November, and I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. I'd like to remind everybody to make sure you mute your microphone while you're not talking and introduce yourself when you do speak. Angelica, I'd like to roll call and certification of quorum, please.
Yes, sir. Mark Schrader,
Present here.
Douglas L. Nixon,
Here.
James Beasley,
Present.
Martin Pessink,
Here.
Justin Adcock,
Present.
and Presiding Officer Rick Straub.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
November. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Like to call Mr. Reyes, Robert Reyes, for open to government training, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, board members. My name is Robert Reyes of the Office of the General Counsel. Pleased to be with you this morning. I'm taking over this program from Jessica Escobar, who is your previous assistant GC. We're going to start off with some training for us all in regards to open government. I know that you all have the resources in the packet offered to you all in preparation for this meeting. So we're going to go over briefly some key concepts in regards to open government. All right, can everyone see the first cover page? Fantastic. As I said, my name is Robert Reyes. I'm one of the assistant general counsels in the Office of General Counsel for the department. Moving forward, we're going to go over three types of government chapters that are found in the statutes. First of all, the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, and the Public Information Act. Some key concepts regarding the Open Meetings Act. The purpose of the act is to ensure open and transparent government. The act requires meetings of governmental bodies to be open to the public and to be preceded by public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting. The provisions of the act are mandatory. Excuse me? And are to be liberally construed in favor of open government. The first key concept is that of a quorum. A quorum is the majority of members of the advisory board or committee as fixed by rule or statute. In this advisory board, we have 7 positions. 1 is currently vacant. So a quorum or majority for this board would be 4. So we have all our members here, so we have a quorum. A quorum of a governmental body, including an advisory board or committee, must meet in order to take an official action. So we are meeting now in accordance with the noticed agenda, and we have a quorum, so there can be official action taking place today if necessary. If we had less than a quorum, the board or committee could still meet and have discussions, but may not take official action. For example, if only 3 of you all were available today, we would be able to still meet but not take any official action. The next key concept is that of a deliberation or discussion, which means a verbal or written exchange among a quorum of a governmental body or between a quorum of a governmental body and another person concerning an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body. A meeting occurs anytime, and I want to stress that, anytime a quorum of a governmental body engages in deliberation regarding public business or public policy over which the governmental body has supervision or control, or any time the body takes formal action. Notice. The act requires advance written notice of the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting held. TDLR provides this notice in the form of an agenda, which was placed on the TDLR website along with the Secretary of State's website, and which you have before you today. As I just said, the notice must be filed with the Texas Secretary of State and at least 7 days before the meeting and must be posted online by both the department and the Secretary of State. A board or committee may not engage in discussions about a subject not included in the agenda. That's a very important takeaway from this slide. If the conversation would tend to flow off to another ancillary issue, we would have to stop and bring ourselves back to what is specifically cited on the agenda for this meeting. What about social functions, conventions, and workshops? Keeping in mind that a meeting occurs whenever a quorum of a governmental body engages in discussion about an issue within the governmental body's jurisdiction, can members ever meet in an informal setting without violating the Open Meetings Act? The answer is yes. For example, if our chair wanted to throw a party and we were all there, would there be a quorum? Yes, there would be a quorum. But the members are free to engage in conversation that is incidental to the event. However, the discussion will be subject to the Open Meetings Act if a quorum of members is involved and the members either engage in a discussion or make decisions about board or committee business or take formal action. So the best practice here would be to, while we can all get together in a social setting, the best thing to do would be to not speak about business that is before the board. Key points to remember: always be aware of any situation occurring outside of a properly noticed meeting in which a quorum of members is present and engaged in discussion. Second, do not engage in substantive conversations relating to board or committee business or policy when a quorum is involved and you are outside of an officially noticed and scheduled meeting. Third, beware of the walking quorum. That is another important concept we're going to look at this time. A walking quorum occurs when fewer than a quorum of members engage in discussion about official business and then communicate those discussions to other members. While fewer than a quorum of members participate in the initial communication, subsequent communication with other members will result in a quorum discussing official business outside of a public meeting. Everything sent to you, if it's sent by the department, should be kept private. That way we don't possibly expose ourselves to a walking quorum. An example for you all. On a 5-member advisory board, 2 members exchange phone calls and emails expressing thoughts on an upcoming rule change, which of course is business brought before, or could be before the board, and exchange research that they have each individually performed regarding the issue. One of the board members subsequently forwards the exchange to another member. Now we have 3 members involved in the discussion, which is a quorum or a majority of the 5-member advisory board. The members have now engaged in a walking quorum by engaging in a small group discussion outside of a properly noticed meeting. Walking quorums. They can occur during conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions, emails, text messages, and other new technologies, including social media. The most important takeaway, again, is to not have these discussions outside of the meetings that are properly noticed by TDLR and identified on the TDLR website and the Secretary of State website. The best practices: members should not meet in small groups, discuss board or committee business, and then communicate those discussions to other members. Members should not send emails or text messages to a quorum of members regarding official business, even if each email is addressed and sent to each member individually. Members should not create posts on social media about board business where a likelihood exists that a quorum of members could participate in discussions. Lastly, members should not ask a quorum of members, even on an individual basis, for feedback or comments on board or committee business outside the public meeting. This is called polling, which is essentially conducting an informal vote on an issue. Guidelines for an open session. A board or committee is limited to discussing the specific items on the agenda. Gentlemen, we have an agenda today, and following this guideline, we should keep our discussions limited to only those specific items. During the public comment portion of the meeting, members of the public are given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer may set reasonable time limits for the commenters. A member of the public or a member of the board may raise a subject that has not been included in the agenda. However, any discussion of the subject must be limited to a proposal to place the subject on the agenda for a future meeting, because of course that item is not on the current agenda. The best practices for conducting open sessions. To avoid violating the act on the basis of insufficient notice, members should limit the discussions to the specific agenda items contained in the posting filed with the Secretary of State. Members should avoid allowing discussions regarding specific agenda items to wander off course into new issues that have not been noticed to the public. And don't worry, if the conversation starts to wander a little bit, Ms. Winston and I will help you all get back on course. Members should also not respond to or discuss issues that are raised during public comment, but which are not on the agenda. And lastly, members should specifically identify items for future agendas and communicate those items to TDLR staff. There's civil remedies that are possible if there is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. However, the more important items for our members are the criminal penalties. There are criminal penalties that are possible if there is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Members are subject to misdemeanor criminal penalties. The penalties are a fine of $100 to $500, confinement in the county jail for 1 to 6 months, or both a fine and jail time. So the government code takes this type of violation into takes it very important and very seriously. Best practices for an Open Meetings Act: to avoid communications that involve a quorum or board or committee members about official business outside of a properly noticed public meeting. And second, during open meetings, we should confine our discussion to items specifically posted on the agenda. There are some resources that we have available for you all in case you all want additional training, and we can definitely send you all these links via email if that's what any of you all would like. Next, some key concepts regarding the Administrative Procedure Act. The purpose of the APA is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure for state agencies, and also to provide for public participation and transparency during the rulemaking process. A rule is a statement of general applicability made by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy, or describes the procedure or practice requirements of a state agency. We have a few sources for our potential rulemaking. Rulemaking can occur as a result of legislative changes, advisory board members offering up different ideas, TDLR staff, a 4-year rule review as contemplated by the statute for the program, and also by rule petition. Rule petition can be brought up by any interested person who may submit that petition to a state agency requesting the adoption of a rule. A interested person is anyone who is a Texas resident, a business entity located in Texas, a governmental subdivision in Texas, or a private a public or private organization that is not a state agency but is located in Texas. There is a specific rubric for which these rule petitions must satisfy before it can move forward. Here is our rulemaking process. Of course, there's many steps here. There's 11 steps. However, the takeaway that I want you to understand is that before any rule is made effective for this board, you will have the chance to see it at least twice. You'll be able to see an initial draft of the rule at an advisory board meeting, and then should you all decide that it should go forward and be offered to the public for comment, after we receive comments after that 30-day public comment period, you will have a chance to see the rule again, and we will describe to you what kind of comments were received and that feedback, and then any changes, if any, we made in response to those comments. So you do have a good couple of times to look at it, at least two, if a rule were to start the process. This is our rule review process. This occurs for programs with a 4-year schedule, rule review schedule. The main takeaway here is that a rule review is basically answering the following question. Is there a need for the rule? And is there a reason why it should continue? Here we have some Attorney General resources for rulemaking. Of course, we can always send these to you by email, send these links to you by email if you all require. Lastly, some key concepts regarding the Public Information Act. Public Information Act, or Open Records Act, is intended to allow public access to information about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and employees. The act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to official business open to the public, with some exceptions. The public information includes any electronic communication created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it is in connection with official agency business. The act should be construed liberally in favor of granting requests for information. That is another key takeaway I want you all to have, is that any business being done for the board, for the industry, that you all make will most likely be accessible to the public through an open records request. If you receive a request that looks like a public information request, please forward that request to the Office of the General Counsel Open Records Team as soon as possible. If the Open Records Team requests information from you, please respond as soon as possible. TDLR must respond to the request as soon as possible, but not later than 10 business days after receiving the request. With that short turnaround time, we must receive information as quickly as possible once the request is known. We cannot ask why someone wants the records. We can only ask clarifying questions to make sure that we offer the correct information in response to the request. The general rule and common exceptions and exemptions to disclosure. The general rule is that there's a presumption of openness, and therefore information will be offered in response to the request. However, certain information is required to be redacted from open records. Those examples include the date of birth of a person, most email addresses, driver's license information, license plate information, and vehicle identification number records. Credit card numbers will also be redacted, as well as HIPAA information or that information covered by an exemption through the Texas Medical Records Privacy Act. And of course, we have some other Public Information Act resources available for you all in case you all need some. That concludes my presentation today. If any of y'all have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. If you have questions after this meeting, please email me at robert.reyes@tdlr.texas.gov. And you may also contact Ms. Winston if you all have any other questions about placing items on agendas or anything of that nature. Thank you all very much for your time and attention.
All right, no further questions on that. Approval of the last meeting minutes of January 27, 2021. Do we have those minutes to review real quick?
I can pull them up. They were in your meeting materials. Let me grab.
Were they?
Yes, sir.
Well, I did not see those on my fact. Does anybody else need to look at those real quick?
They're on page 14 of the material.
Okay. Nobody needs to look at those, but I will ask for a motion to approve. I got a
Make a
motion.
motion. Justin Adcock. I make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Is that Mr.
And
Oldmixon?
Helica, you want to get the count as all in favor? Raise your
Yes.
hand.
If you don't mind, can I do a roll call real quick so I can make sure I get everyone?
Pardon?
Can I do a roll call real quick just to make sure I get everyone?
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
That's
My
okay.
bad.
Mark Schrader,
Yes, here.
Douglas Oldmixon,
Yes.
James Beasley,
Here.
Martin Pessink,
Aye.
Justin Adcock,
Yes.
and Presiding Officer Rick Straub.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, now we ready for the vote? Or was that
Let's
good?
vote. That was good.
Okay, thank you. Bear with me, guys. Public comment, there's no public comment at this time, correct?
Correct.
All right. Staff reports, from staff discussion, Miss Laura Hernandez. Ms. Hernandez, please.
Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez. I am one of the licensing managers here at TDLR. Lisa Hodek, who was the licensing manager previously, retired on August 31st, and our division went through a reorganization as part of her retirement and retirement of another manager. So this program was transferred to my team. We handle several programs currently, towing, the fuel metering quality program, and so we're excited to learn the Auctioneer program and to be able to assist the customers with the Auctioneer program. In my advisory board report, I entered in the statistics there for the auctioneers and the assistant auctioneers that will run through for fiscal year 2021 and for fiscal year 2022. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to assist or find out if I don't know it, because the program's a little new to me, but I'm learning, trying to learn quickly.
Laura, did that wrap up your report?
That wraps up. If there's no questions or any additional information that you all would like to see added to this report, if there is, you can always let me know later, but that's my report for now.
Thank you.
Customer service, Miss Myra Rodriguez, please, ma'am.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Got you.
Awesome. Okay, so my name is Myra Rodriguez. Good morning, board members. I am the new manager overseeing this program for the customer service division. And our statistics below for this current fiscal year show that we have received a total contacts of 279 by phone and email. And as you can see from the beginning of this fiscal year, from September until now, we don't have November's numbers yet, but as you can see, they have started to decrease in numbers, which is a current trend that we see from the previous fiscal year as well. The top reasons that our customers call in about this program is for license status, application information, and renewal information. Other than the statistics, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them for you.
Okay, we're concluded on that.
Yes, that concludes my
Okay.
report. Thank you.
All righty. Enforcement, Aaron Heath, please, Mr. Heath, sir.
Hi, my name is Aaron Heath, and I'm a prosecutor with the Enforcement Division, here to give the enforcement staff report. We'll start with personnel updates. There's been a lot of personnel updates since our last meeting, and I just wanted to highlight one, and that is our senior prosecutor, Karen Cox, retired at the beginning of this year, and she had been with TDLR for 17 years and had worked in state government for over 30 years. So congratulations, Karen. Moving on to the statistics. A new development for you is that we are now differentiating the complaints received by source. And so we have the consumer complaints, which are complaints submitted by members of the public. We have the department initiated complaints for program violations. And then we have the criminal history records, which are opened for applications and renewal applications and initiated by the department. So we had 234 total complaints received for fiscal year 2022. For cases opened, we had 14 and we closed 11 cases. The average time to close was 304 days, and the percentage of cases resolved within 6 months was 45%. And we had 0 cases in 2022 resulting in disciplinary action and 18 cases pending at the end of fiscal year 2022. And you can see from the pie charts below that approximately the same amount of criminal history cases are opened as compared to TDLR as a whole. And instead of having departmental complaints, it's all wrapped up into consumer complaints. Since we didn't have any cases resulting in any sort of action, we don't have anything in most of the fields until we get down to informally resolved, which we had 11, which were the cases closed. Informally resolved are cases that are closed for insufficient evidence, or the complainant withdrew the complaint, or that the auctioneer informally resolved the matter with the complainant, such as paying an amount due. These are the alleged violations that we had at opening. However, since we didn't have any disciplinary action, we had 0. We had basically no violations resulting in disciplinary action for fiscal year 2022. And for fiscal year 2021, we had 108 total complaints received. We had 13 cases opened, 13 cases closed, and the average time to close was 158 days. The percentage of cases resolved within 6 months was 61%. And again, we had 0% resulting disciplinary action, and we had 15 cases opened at the end of fiscal year 2021. And similar to the previous year, we had about 23% criminal history versus 77% consumer cases that were opened in fiscal year 2021. And we had 13 informally resolved. And as I said previously, no violations resulting in disciplinary action for fiscal year 2021. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
2021 and the beginning of 2022, we don't have a breakdown of what the pandemic might have been a big part of that? The cases, not having the cases and what have you during that time? I guess maybe that's an open question that hard to answer, but
Yeah, we don't, as far as this staff report goes, we don't have that kind of breakdown
okay.
regarding COVID.
Okay, that's okay. I just curious on, because that probably had a big play in non-activity, but okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi Aaron, this is Justin Adcock. It looks like there was a significant difference in the time to closure between the 2021 numbers and the 2022.
Mhm.
Is there any specific reason for that?
Because they're so, I would say compared to other programs, there's fewer cases involved in this program. So if there's a particularly long case, it can kind of skew the numbers. I don't have a specific answer as to why it was longer, although I do recall one case taking a particularly long time. The auctioneer, the case was open for failure to pay, and the auctioneer had a stroke, and so there was a lot of delay for that. And they ended up eventually, when we put them in communication with each other, they ended up resolving the case by getting the payment that was due.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr.
Any other
Chairman,
questions?
I do, Aaron.
Mr. Chairman, this is Doug Oldmixon. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. So I noticed a couple of things. One is that obviously all of the cases, since there are no orders of any kind, have been informally, for the last 2 years, have been informally resolved. And so congratulations to the team. If that means you guys are you have all the tools that you need to get results without actually having to impose orders. Is that a fair description of how the prosecutor staff, the enforcement staff feels about you have adequate tools to be able to get results without having to go to orders?
Sure. And I guess I'd like to highlight that the ultimate goal of enforcement is to achieve compliance. And so that's to bring any sort of complaint before us to try to get a resolution for the complainant and to get the respondent, which in this case would be an auctioneer, into compliance with our laws and rules. And so oftentimes what these cases involve are payments of money between the two. And so if we can get cases opened and we make communication with the auctioneer and say, hey, this is what happened, this is what you did wrong. If you can make this payment, we can see if the complainant is willing to drop the case and resolve this issue. And that's what happened in a lot of the cases. Now, not all of the cases were like that. Some of them were, there's just insufficient evidence of a violation or that no violation actually occurred and that the complaint didn't have merit.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And I guess the real gist of it was, does the enforcement team feel like you have all of the tools that you need to achieve this result, which I understand the goal of enforcement is compliance. And so it appears, at least with the limited number of complaints in the last 2 years, which we're not sure if that's because of fewer public auctions were held because of, the lack of gatherings during COVID, all that kind of stuff, or, went to online, and those are better conducted, or, I'm just speculating there. But really, I was just looking for an affirmation or a judgment from the enforcement staff that there's nothing in terms of rules, for example, that you need from this board to have more effective tools to achieve compliance.
I think that's something that will be addressed in agenda item G with the study.
And to Mary Winston, TDLR. Hi, Mr. Olmixon. For everyone who doesn't know, I worked for Mr. Olmixon several years ago when he was the administrator for the Real Estate Commission. So good to see you. And I hope you're enjoying your retirement. Aaron, you are catching him and he's trying to get technical with you, and he's doing a fantastic job. But so far so good is what I'll tell you. And if we will be requesting anything, the board as a whole will know. But as we kind of go along through the agenda, we'll see that we're still wrapping up some things from the last session. We're heading to another session. So far, so good. We have been able to, in spite of COVID, to get things worked out. So they will be kind of covering this shortly in a future agenda item. But thank you for your insight. Mr. Olmixon, because he has run a state agency, he knows kind of the insights and nuances that we have to go through. So I appreciate your question, and we will get some more clarity. And you may have other questions later, but I want to let poor Aaron off the hook because he's answered everything he can. He does a great job.
Well,
Thank
I'm
you.
not, thank you, Mary, and I'm not, I wasn't trying to put him on the spot other than to say, one, to congratulations to the enforcement staff to not have to go to orders anytime in the last 2 years. That tells me they probably do have all the tools that they need, and I was just looking for affirmation on that. But I realize
Thank you.
policy question that rises to your or the director level. So.
Thank you. He's given us a compliment, Aaron. We just are going to say thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing it, but yes, thank you.
Well, I do have one more question, and that is there were three. Um,
I'm
there were
sorry. If this is a question for me, I can't hear it.
It is a question for you, and I apologize. I don't know why you can't hear it. So can you hear me, Aaron? Can you hear me?
Very lightly.
It's a little muted, but I can make it out. I'm blind as a bat, but I hear very well.
Well,
It's true.
For the past 2 fiscal years, each year there were 3 criminal history cases open. Okay. Now, in our meeting the last meeting we held in January of 21, one of the additional agenda items that was added because of the discussion, one of the things that was accomplished at that meeting was the removal of the 5-year felony bar as a blanket bar to licensure. Okay, the presence of a felony in the last conviction of a felony in the last 5 years. So that was removed. And that was a requirement from, I think that probably came out of sunset. But in any case, one of the agenda items that was proposed for this meeting, for the next time we met, was a discussion of the kinds of criminal history that still require the agency to open cases. So in this particular, for the past 2 fiscal years, we've had 6 cases. I didn't see any other place on the agenda where that discussion was going to happen. So I thought perhaps this would be the appropriate moment to ask what kinds of criminal history were present for those 6 cases to have been opened. I see that they were all resolved, but what kinds of criminal history still require the opening of a case?
Okay, Aaron, I'm going to take this one for you because I do want to apologize if we missed that request. Okay, so we will try to get the information to the board before the end of this meeting. And I'm having people pop all in the back telling me different things. So we'll try to get the information. And for those cases, like what kind of case were we looking at for these criminal history background checks? And if we miss something, we'll definitely go back and make sure we catch the requests from the last meeting in 21. So, and this is also, we'll try to get that before the end of the meeting. If it's not before the end of the meeting, because we do have another presentation, we will send that in an email to everyone, and we'll make sure, Aaron, that we make it a part of our next meeting. But I want to get it before then, right? Get that information before then. Apologies for missing that. Appreciate you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Aaron,
thank you.
Yes.
excuse me, Mark Schrader here.
Hi.
Quick question. Thanks for the report. Appreciate that. The other one is when you were kind of scrolling through, could you go back to the graphic that it kind of went through a little bit quickly that stated what the violations were in some of the cases. I think they were broken down. It just kind of went quickly.
Sure.
If you don't mind, because I was just curious to see what they were.
So if I'm not actually the person controlling this, but
Okay, I think it was the reasons or something like that.
yeah,
Just
Angelica, can
going
you go
back.
down slightly?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it right here? This right here?
I think that, yes. I
Okay.
just didn't understand, it went through because I was curious to just see what they were.
Uh-huh.
And so, okay, so there was that one.
So I kind of skipped over them because we didn't actually have any cases result in disciplinary action, but the ones that we received, the cases that were opened, these are the reasons they were opened. So this is the alleged violation at opening. And so you can see that for fiscal year 2021, the top reason with 5 open cases was the auctioneer failed to give the money. Oh. I'm sorry, sir. I think you're muted. Or I just can't hear.
I can't hear him either.
Okay.
Can't hear you, Mark.
Oh,
All right, are you there?
Now
okay,
we-
Mr. Schroeder, we can hear you now.
I'm
Yep.
so sorry. I'm in a parking lot stealing somebody's, so to speak, borrowing their Wi-Fi.
It's public.
So
It's
anyway, I'm in the
public. It's
middle of
public.
nowhere, Ohio, so sorry about that. Anyway, what part did you lose me?
Basically, whenever I stopped talking, I think you were muted from that point on, couldn't hear you.
Okay. So the first thing was, thank you for putting this graphic up so I got a chance to see that, and everyone else can also. And then the second one was, I'm guessing you don't have this stat, but I would love to see this in the future as a requirement of when someone does make a claim against an auctioneer, to find out, particularly like in the benefit side, we aren't required, state doesn't require a licensed auctioneer to conduct a benefit auction. So in the future, I would just love to see if that question is asked, was this person a licensed, Texas licensed auctioneer that you're trying to, make a complaint against, or they're not, or they're an amateur. And
Mhm.
I'm guessing you don't have that stat now for what took place in this, but I'd love to see that for the future so that we could break down and just see, is this coming from somebody who's licensed in the state, or is this coming from, Joe Blow or Cindy Blow, who's going to take over the benefit auction and conduct it and made numerous violations?
Okay.
So I think that falls under unlicensed activity.
Yes, that would be an unlicensed
Yeah.
activity.
And I know I keep butting in, but I'm a
That's good.
former prosecutor and I just can't help myself. I love enforcement. But part of the I want to say weirdness of the report is COVID. What you guys do requires a certain level of contact that was limited, but we will see what we can do about unlicensed activity. And I know what you're getting at, and we'll see if we can capture that. I'm not sure. We'll take a look to see if we have that information.
No, thanks, Mary. I appreciate that. It just came out of curiosity because I don't know, in looking at things, if in the past, if that had ever been asked or recorded, and it would be nice to kind of know what the situation is with licensed auctioneers versus unlicensed. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And I'll
All right.
just say, we do have a alleged violation for unlicensed activity. And so it's right there. Third one from the bottom, acted as auctioneer or associate auctioneer without license. So we only had one of those types of cases open
Mhm.
for fiscal year 2021.
Yeah. And normally we don't know what it would be, but we'll get more stats as we
Mhm.
venture out into the world. But that's it for now. Okay.
Are we
All right. Are
good?
there any more questions?
Let's move on then.
All right. Thank you.
Education and examination, Mr. Michael Strawn, please, sir.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I'm a manager for the Education Examination Division. Here to provide you our statistics today. Before you, you'll see the pass rates for our examination. You'll see the pass rate is slightly higher for this fiscal year versus previous fiscal year. However, much like you heard Aaron earlier talking about the weight of times due to low volumes, the same thing apply here with the statistics. With such a low volume, pass rates can be greatly affected by one or two individuals passing or failing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. As it goes throughout the fiscal year, we will probably see the same as we've seen in past fiscal years, a pass rate around 50%. And moving on down, we have the continuing education courses provided and a curriculum statistics. And as you can kind of see, where we are for this beginning of this fiscal year compared to prior fiscal year is right in line with what we expect to see. So with that being said, our division has a pretty simplistic report for your industry, but I'm here for any questions, and that concludes my report.
Any questions? Okay, moving on. Regulatory Program Management Division, Ms. Latasha Poland, please, ma'am.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Chairman and everyone. I am here on behalf of the Regulatory Program Management Division. I have since taken over the program since Russ retired. I've been with the agency for 15 years. We have went under a reorganization, and now we have our manager is Chris Rusty, is our section manager over the Auctioneer program. I don't have any statistics or anything. We are open for events. If you have something, I have put my information in the staff report. I'm not sure if y'all received that. I think you have. So if you have anything that you would like to invite TDLR to, we are willing to be a presence at anything that you have industry-wide. We would like to be more involved with the Auctioneer program. Right now, all I get is a little bit of questions about, am I required to have a license? I'm doing a charity auction. Do I have to hire a licensed auctioneer? Different questions like that. Some people are coming from a reciprocity standpoint. I'm at a state that does not have a license requirement, but I do have this experience. So I do get them to know what they need to do in order to get licensed in the state of Texas. And that's basically what I do for the auctioneer program once I receive those inquiries from the public. And that concludes my report. If you have any questions for me, I'm willing to try to answer them for you.
Let me step out here real quick. While this is on my mind and you're in a good spot, I think, I'd like to invite you guys or any part of you all to the Texas Auctioneers Association convention in June to see what we're doing today and kind of goes along with what we're doing. So please give me a contact if you would like to come, and we'll make the arrangements and go from there.
Yes.
I can get you more information on that. It's going to be Father's Day weekend in June. I can tell you that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to interject because you just sprung that thought in my head.
Yes.
Presiding Officer Stroud.
Yes, ma'am.
Tasha, forgive me. I have attended that conference several years ago when I was in enforcement, and it's a wonderful time. We were able to provide the legal and ethics training from just the board, and it was Tasha, it was me and Chris Russi and some different folks, and it is wonderful to see and actually intriguing for us who don't know how to do what you do to watch you do what you do. It's amazing, right? And we were able to provide just some updates from TDLR and just kind of get a better vantage point of our auctioneers in action. So definitely, I know we'll have this on public record, but Latasha, make sure you reach out. That's a wonderful conference.
Will do. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Executive office, Mary, please.
All right, board. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. It looks like we didn't overstuff ourselves on the turkey, and we're getting ready to gear up for our next big eating event, which I shouldn't say is Christmas, but I'm from Louisiana and we like good food, right? So, thank you for joining us. I have a very short report today, and A is bill implementation. It's for our update. Now, that's actually going to be happening in our next agenda item, G, because we kind of go through cycles within state government and definitely within TDLR. We have coming up a legislative session that's coming up in January. And once we get our legislative session out of the way, we have all these bills, and then we handle bill implementation. I was messaging in the back with Jeff Kopus, one of our government relations gurus, and he does an excellent job. Love Jeff. I told him he was the bomb, and I did say no one says it anymore, but I'm just showing my age. But he really is. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I just threw out a question. So, like, how many bills have been filed so far? And not only did he answer how many bills had been filed so far, he's like, oh, and we're following 58 of those. And so, so far, for the session that has not happened, there have been 1,006 House and Senate bills that have been filed. And then 193 is the total, which also includes resolutions. Of that amount, TDLR is currently following 58 of those that may have some sort of connection to our licensed bodies. Now, I then threw out the question, any murmurings on our auctioneer program? Not so far, but we haven't even started yet. But I wanted to put this out there because I want you to know that we're constantly looking out for our licensees, what's coming ahead of time. We don't just prepare when they start the session in January. We work and we are preparing before the session starts. Jeff also wanted us to note that we will have the bills up on our public website the week of the legislature kickoff, which is the week of January 10th. So stay tuned, and you can you don't have to go to TLO because that site, you have to kind of look for specific bills and certain things. And unless you're used to navigating it, just come to our website and you will see tons of bills, literally, that we are following. And if you have questions, please reach out. And I always tell our boards, just reach out to advisory boards. Advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov, because we want kind of a streamlined level of communication, and we will disperse those questions wherever they need to be. We don't want anything going to a different party and being hung up. So without further ado, I want to just give us our little statistics, and I say little statistics because we've already kind of acknowledged that what you guys do requires public interaction. And COVID kind of cut that off a bit. So, for quite a bit. So, for the past 6 months, from May 15th this year to November 14th, the website has received a little over 17,000 views, which is a little under 100 per day. Most people access this from their smartphones. We collect this data to make sure we are distributing the data correctly. Do we need an app? Is the website good enough? How is it being handled? And it also kind of gives us an idea. It depends on our program. Some of our programs, folks operate at their laptops. They're sitting down. And so they'll have a larger number of a percentage that are viewing our website from a laptop. That's not our auctioneers. Y'all are out and about and working and doing business. So 61% of you access our website for questions on smartphones, 37% on desktop computer, and we always have kind of a really small percentage who actually are using it from a tablet. Top reasons for visiting: frequently asked questions, questions about auctioneer schools, laws and rules. What I was telling you a little bit earlier, we were able to provide some education before on that several years ago at that awesome conference. forms, and finally, exam information. So this is not a scientific poll, but it's something that lets us know how our website is working. Is it answering questions? Which questions are what we need to put up as far as what's in the front of the page, the back of the page, and our wonderful web designers do a great job of getting this information and utilizing it so the public and our licensees can have best viewability. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All righty, moving on to the biggie. Presentation and discussion report required by HB Bill 1560. I'd call on Tony, Meg, and Julie. If you're all here, thank you. Please.
Yes, sir, we are. Good morning, Chair Stroud and advisory board members. My name is Tony Kuvion. I'm the budget analyst for the agency, and I'm the person that was selected to be the team lead for bill implementation team 6, which was the auctioneer study. As you know, Article 2 in House Bill 1560 from last session required the department to do a study of the auctioneering program and report that study to the two legislative oversight committees for us, which is the House Appropriations Committee and Senate Business and Commerce. So in this agenda item, we're going to talk about the report and what's in it, which was put together. We went over the laws and rules from other states for comparison. We had 2 surveys to collect information. We reviewed our internal processes and had internal meetings with the various divisions to talk about improvements and stuff. And so I'm going to let Meg Peel talk about the report and the information that's in it, and then Julie Davis is going to present some requested information about legislative history for auctioneering. So with that, take it away, Dr. Peel.
Good afternoon, advisory board members. My name is Meg Peel, and I am the Policy Research and Data Analyst for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. Today, we are going to present a brief overview of the results of the Auctioneer Program study. Then we will be available to answer any questions that you might have. In the 87th regular legislative session, the legislature passed HB 1560. A component of this legislation required TDLR to conduct a study of the auctioneer program. The study report we are sharing with you today resulted from that mandate. TDLR staff used a multi-method study designed to examine the auctioneer program for this study. Lawyers conducted a review of current laws and rules at TDLR. The research team conducted a state-by-state comparison of the regulation of auctioneers. Data analysts and research staff conducted 2 surveys, a survey of auctioneer licensees and a survey of the public, a series of interviews and focus groups to garner qualitative data, and an analysis of all available internal data regarding the auctioneer program. During this process, the study team also reviewed internal processes and procedures to identify opportunities for increasing efficiencies, providing better customer service, and enhancing public safety in the licensing and regulation of auctioneering in the state of Texas. The results of these data collection efforts were then combined and are included in the study. Study results indicate that 26 states do not regulate auctioneers and 24 states actually do regulate auctioneers at some level. Appendix B of the report has further information on the state-by-state analysis. The number of auctioneer licensees has been steadily decreasing over the past few fiscal years. There was a high of 2,480 licensees in fiscal year 2017. That has decreased to 2,230 licensees in fiscal year 2022. This is an 11.2% decrease from fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2022. The auctioneer licensee population skews older. This could have implications for the auctioneer workforce in the future. 46.75% of the licensee population is over the age of 60, and 72% of the licensee population is over the age of 50. This could have implications for licensing trends and the viability of the auctioneer program in future years. Calls related to the auctioneer program account for less than half of 1% of the total contact volume for customer service each fiscal year. Additionally, customer service contact volume has been decreasing for the last 2 fiscal years. An examination of the reasons for calls related to the auctioneer program reveals that most calls are for license status inquiries, 39.54%. Additional call reasons include questions about filling out the initial application or the renewal application, questions about laws and rules, and consumers seeking assistance in initiating a complaint against an auctioneer. An analysis of enforcement data indicates that the number of orders related to the auctioneer program increased steadily through fiscal year 2018 and then decreased through fiscal year 2022. No orders were entered in either fiscal year 2021 or fiscal year 2022 for the auctioneer program. In reference to your earlier question, we conducted a trend analysis that indicates that COVID-19 shutdowns and restrictions may have had an impact on the volume of auctions occurring, which would then in turn reduce the number of complaints in line with that reduction in the number of auctions that actually occurred. Similarly, this graph presents the total payouts from the Texas Auctioneer Education and Recovery Trust Fund by fiscal year. Note that no payouts were made in fiscal years 2021 or 2022. Again, this could indicate an impact from COVID-19. Other key findings include most survey respondents felt that auctioneers do require regulation and that TDLR does a good job of regulating auctioneers. There were some survey respondents who indicated that the auctioneer field should be deregulated, but that volume was lower than the amount that felt that it should be regulated. Study findings indicate a need for better transparency and honesty in auctioneer processes and advertising. Public survey respondents had concerns over the fees that are charged by auctioneers. Many survey respondents felt that online auctions should be regulated. Licensees would prefer an online option for both new and renewal license applications. There are concerns with the quality and delivery of education, continuing education, and testing components of the auctioneer program. We found that the auctioneer program uses less than 1% of TDLR resources. Additionally, internal analyses indicate that additional resources are not required for the auctioneer program at TDLR, answering another one of your previous questions. And finally, study findings indicate that TDLR could do a better job in public outreach and education in the auctioneer program, particularly outreach and education to members of the general populace. A variety of recommendations to improve internal processes are outlined on page 14 of the report. The top recommendations include a review of educational and exam materials and procedures to identify opportunities for improvements, a review of enforcement procedures to find opportunities to better respond to unlicensed activities and address bad actors, an effort to improve communications and instructional materials to reduce the need for RFIs and incomplete applications, as well as informational and how-to videos, a move to an online process for new applications, and development of targeted outreach and education materials for both licensees and members of the public. Key recommendations for legislative changes are outlined on pages 14 to 15 of the report. The top recommendations include updating the standards of practice required for practitioners, improving administration of the fund, making adjustments to enhance enforcement processes and authority, and clarifying the requirements for associate auctioneer licensees. The next steps in our timeline are outlined here. TDLR will present the findings and recommendations to the Texas Commission of Licensing and Regulation on December 6, 2022. The final report is due to the relevant committees at the Capitol on January 1st of 2023, but we intend to submit the report early in mid-December ahead of holiday vacations. Thank you, and we are happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time. My colleague, Julie Davis, will now give you an overview of the legislative history related to the auctioneer program.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Davis, and I'm one of the government relations officers with TDLR. Several members of the work group requested a legislative history of the auctioneer program and specifically about online auction regulations. Before I go into that, though, Presiding Officer Stroud, you had asked about any legislative activity before the program was created at TDLR. I looked at the first or the 5 sessions preceding that 1975 bill that created the program, and I was not able to find any significant efforts prior to that to regulate auctioneers. However, what we've included on page 90 of your materials is a summary of the most significant bills impacting regulation of the auctioneer program at TDLR since that time. And that's what I'm going to go over a little bit today.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And just as a reminder, this is just a summary. There are other bills. So if you have questions about different regulations, let me know as we're talking through this legislative history. But for our conversation pertinent to what was requested, other than House Bill 1925 creating the program in 1975, House Bill 3038 in the 83rd session and House Bill 2481 in the 84th session are the most significant bills to review today. After House Bill 3038 was passed in 2013, exempting auctions conducted outside of the state, the House Committee on Licensing and Administrative Procedures was tasked with studying the impact of the bill and its effect on multi-state auction companies and business-to-business auctions, so relevant to our conversation about online auctions. As part of that study, TDLR assembled a focus group and presented the committee with its findings, and specific to our discussion today, that the bill had several provisions that could impact interstate commerce, including that new exemption for a sale or auction conducted outside of this state. At that hearing, TDLR requested more legislative direction as to those issues, which we received in the 84th session. Specifically, online auctions were exempted in House Bill 2481. So listed in your materials is also included a House Research Organization, or HRO, report for House Bill 2481 that speaks to the positions taken by proponents and opponents of the bill, including provisions to exempt online auctions from regulation. That's there for your review. You'll have seen in the report several legislative changes were identified that go beyond TDLR's administration of the program and become policy considerations for the legislature, including the regulation of online auctions. Staff discussed this with the work group, but for those of you that weren't there, individual stakeholders or associations can lobby for those items, and we did want to make mention of those in the report because they were brought up in the studies and different interviews, but TDLR staff cannot make recommendations for or against those because there are legal prohibitions against lobbying as a state agency. Our recommendations focus solely on program administration. But again, these materials regarding legislative history are for your information and for discussion. This agenda item was for the board's discussion, so we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, please.
So this is Doug Oldmixon. Thank you for the this rather thorough review study of the kind of the state of regulation of the auction field and recommendations for improvements. I think you've achieved it appears that you have achieved the purpose of the directive that was included in the bill from the legislature. So I congratulate you on that. I had one question. I was looking for statistics that support a conclusion that you made in the draft report. And Dr. Peel actually stated it differently, and I think she's accurate. And that is that the auctioneer field, the body of license holders, skews older. And she gave the various cohorts and percentages. And that is true. By comparison, or really it's not a comparison, it's just you look at the percentage that are younger, under 60 or under 40 or under 50, those kinds of things, and compared to the older. The two observations I would make about that, one is that if you add in the folks who are under 40 and compare those to the folks that are, over 80, actually, there's twice as many, but that's kind of an artificial, picking your what's the on-ramp and what's the off-ramp, right? So there's more people coming in under 40 than there are going out over 80. But between 40 and 60, it's relatively stable. In other words, there's a cohort that's about the same between 40 and 60 and 60 and 80, percentage-wise. So that's kind of stable in its core, if you will. But totally overall, that still skews older, which is exactly the observation that was made. However, the report says, or the claim that's made in the report that I think needs a little bit of tweaking, is the licensee population is aging. And that brings to mind the fact that year over year, we keep getting older. I mean, that's how I interpret that, is that everybody's getting older, and we're not, you took the average age in 2017 and the average age in 2022, that it would be older, and that trend appears to be continuing, causing a different set of concerns than just the fact that we have a lot of older auctioneers, if there's new folks essentially coming in as old ones are going out. So different considerations there. So I would just ask, what I didn't find in the report was any statistics that support this aging trend. So if my interpretation of the words is I think accurately the way that people would read it, the licensed population is aging, it continues to skew older and older and older by comparison as a trend. There's no data to support that in the report itself. Doesn't mean it isn't true, it's just not found in the report itself. So if you could potentially address whether you have that information available to you, or whether the conclusion needs to be tweaked a little bit on the overall age of auctioneers as opposed to the trend of auctioneers continuing to get older.
Yes, sir. So we don't include every table of data that we analyzed in the report, or it would be like 500 pages long. But what I can tell you is that both the average age is skewing older, and if you look at histograms over time of the age distribution, that age distribution is skewing more towards the older age categories or bins in the histograms. And so what we are seeing when you do what is called a traditional workforce analysis is that the people in that occupational category are skewing older, their ages are skewing older, all of that is happening. And so that indicates from a time series analytics standpoint that there's the potential for this workforce to start aging out without the similar younger aged population to be coming in to replace that workforce as they retire, as they leave the occupation, and all of that. So it is something that we just wanted to point out, bring to y'all's attention as well as the legislators' attention, that we could have a situation where we don't have the volume of new auctioneers coming in to replace existing auctioneers who might be aging out or retiring, if that makes sense, sir.
No, it does. It does. And so those statistics, one, are available, and two, have been analyzed. That is not mentioned anywhere in the report, just the broad conclusion that that it is aging. The licensed population is aging without any support in the data that's included in the report. So whether or not you just add, a couple of sentences that says you've looked at that data and in fact that is true, that would be something, if I was reading the report as an outsider, I'd be looking for some data that supports the aging, not just the age distribution. That makes sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay. And thank you. As I said, I think you guys did a great job on the report.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Justin Adcock. If you look at the race of the licensee respondents, the number of white respondents was 94.9%, with very few other, I guess, races represented. Is that representative of the licensees as a whole?
Yes, sir,
Well-
it is.
Okay.
We ran analytics to make sure that the sociodemographic distribution of the respondents to the survey was reflective of the survey or of the licensee population as a whole, and that indeed does match up. That is an
Okay.
accurate thing, yes.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on then.
Mr. Chair,
Um,
Mr. Chair,
for-
sorry.
yes, go ahead.
This is Doug Oldmixon again.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one other observation that I think is another positive that the report reveals. And that is there's an inclusion of the of the 5 categories during the survey that was done, the survey of auction license holders and the survey of the public. Okay, so there's a significant number of public that participated, but overall, the distribution of on the far ends of what's positive and what's negative, the percentages overall mostly match, which is a very interesting. It's very interesting that the practitioners and the public share very similar perceptions of the strength and on the questions that were asked. And I think that is a remarkable finding. It's not something you find often when you do insider versus general public kinds of perceptions. So there's a really good education program, if you will, about what the expectations of auctioneer license holders are among the folks who took the time to respond from the public, because there's a very close overlap between those impressions on the questions that were asked. And I thought that was worthy of recognition. So whoever designed that, kudos to you.
Good job. Anyone else, please? Okay, moving on. Let's.
Presiding Officer Stroud.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry for interrupting, Mary Winston here, but we have some answers to some earlier asked questions. And I wanted to have one more little point of personal privilege, but we have Mr. Aaron Heath here because our enforcement folks, as always, have been rocking it in the background, and one of our lead managers there, Trevor Thielen, has been reaching out, and we do have some data for you.
Okay, cool.
We do. Although I believe the person who asked the question stepped away.
It's recorded.
Okay. He'll see it. He'll see it. Okay, so this was concerning the questions regarding the 3 criminal history cases, or 3 for fiscal year 2021 and 3 for 2022, so 6 total cases. 5 of those cases were criminal history evaluation letter cases. Those are situations where individuals can ask the agency to perform a preliminary review of their criminal history to see if they would qualify for the license if they applied. And that's so that they don't have to invest money and time resources into getting an application when we would just deny them anyways.
And Aaron,
so-
I'm sorry, Mr. Omixon just sat back down. Mr. Omixon, did you get that?
Can't hear you.
Mr. Omixon, you are muted.
Yes, I did hear. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay.
5 of the 6 cases in the last 2
Okay,
years
awesome.
were requests for preliminary review of criminal history record.
Awesome.
Yes.
So there's one left.
So 5 of them were those criminal history evaluation letters. And it's important to note that those aren't cases that we open on our own initiative. It's something that we're required to do whenever they make that request to us. So these were 5 cases for these criminal history evaluation letters that were from non-licensees. And then with the 6th case, I believe it was for a renewal application. It's either an application or a renewal application. And there was a criminal history issue that appeared, but after further determination and investigation, it was determined that the criminal history wasn't actually for the person who was the licensee, so that case was closed.
Okay. Were there any more questions about this? I did have one other thing I wanted to poke in before we go to the next agenda item.
About that particular topic, obviously the education that's required, the limited number of criminal history findings that might affect the issuance or renewal of a license is kind of what I think we were, the board was after. It's like, well, if we're taking 5-year felonies as a category, as a disqualifying category, just kind of off the record, that's no longer a requirement. You have to look at each and every one. And I guess the real question comes up is, what kinds of criminal history, one, are we seeing? And two, obviously none of them have been disqualifying so far. One was an error and 5 were reviewed as a preliminary matter, and whether or not they precluded licensure is undetermined at this point, since you guys didn't open them, you just reviewed and then determined. It's up to the applicant or the person to decide whether to become an applicant for a license. So I guess the only question that remains to me, if we're not seeing folks with criminal history applying, well, good for all of us. But if we are there some categories that would still be disqualified?
So we
that today, we probably would take a little bit of research, but I think that's at least for me, that's the impetus for adding that to the agenda last time.
So regarding the types of disqualifying offenses, those are located in the criminal history guidelines, which are located online. So you can go into TDLR's public website, find auctioneers, and it'll be on the right side. There's some drop-down menus, and you can find it in there what the particular offenses are. Since there was only one case against the licensee, and it turned out to be the wrong person anyways, I don't see for this particular program a trend in criminal history cases or anything like that. So I'd say it's not really at this current time, it's not a large factor in the auctioneer industry, at least the licensed industry.
Thank you for the time.
So thank you so much, Aaron. And I do want to, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Trevor, for getting that information to us. And you can kind of sort of pat yourselves on the back if you want to, because we regulate a whole lot of industries, and this is not the same in every one. But I do want to note that, as Aaron said, our criminal conviction guidelines are located on our website, and they are published and available for us to take a look at, and they do include the guidelines in Auctioneer. So we also publish them because we want to deter people with disqualifying convictions from applying. We don't want to waste your money, and we don't want to waste valuable time that we can be using on to process something that is going to go forward. So kudos to those who asked us to take a look, but this doesn't appear to be an issue in Auctioneer, but we just operate in real time pretty much. And so if that changes, you will know. I wanted to take a little point of personal privilege and acknowledge one of our deputy executive directors, Mr. David Gonzalez, who is present in this meeting. And I want to give David an opportunity just to say hello, and if he had any comments that he wanted to make before, because we're almost done, but before we get to the ending items, I wanted to give David an opportunity to speak to you guys.
So, good morning, Auctioneer Advisory Board members. David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director. It's been 26 years here at TDLR, and I'm actually pleased to announce my retirement at the end of this year and just wanted to let y'all know it's been a privilege and an honor to serve at this agency, including the Auctioneers Advisory Board. The staff have been phenomenal. Y'all have always contributed. There's been no shortage of input that we received from Auctioneer Advisory Board members on things that relate to this program. So just tell you that this stuff doesn't happen without y'all's participation, and thank y'all for that over the years. Mr. Mixon, I hope to join your ranks, and hopefully the water's fine, because I hope to be good at retirement. If I enjoy it half as much as I've enjoyed working at TDLR, I'm going to be okay. But I just wanted to tell y'all goodbye, and thanks for y'all's service. Continue it, please.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank y'all. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, David. I didn't want to steal his thunder. I wanted him to be able to tell us himself, and he will be greatly missed. And we're all a little envious, and we understand his decision, but he will be greatly missed. So that's my interruptions for the day, presiding officer.
Okay, all
proceed.
good. All good. All right, moving on to item H, recommendations for agenda items for the next advisory board meeting. Anybody on the board have any suggestions for agenda items for the next meeting?
Possibly, and this, I don't want to speak out of term, but if we're not familiar with those criminal conviction guidelines, that's
Yep.
something that we can review, Aaron. We can just kind of have a little presentation on that. That's an internal thing. And as always, if you don't have items today, you can contact advisory.boards at any time at tdlr.texas.gov and notify us of some agenda item that you would like to present, and we will definitely move that forward.
Okay. Good. Before we move on, nobody have any ideas? So leave it up to the staff, I reckon, to schedule our next meeting to get everybody together and let us know when that is.
We will poll the board
Okay.
and for dates in the future, as we have kind of all previously stated, we are heading into the legislative session. So nothing has happened yet, but it's a whole bunch of movement going on in the background. So I would assume and anticipate that our next meeting would be following that session. And we would also have updates from that session as another agenda item. And those things also are coming from internal, and we'll contact you, poll the board, make sure of your availability, and have a meeting at that time.
Sure. Okay. All righty. Then I guess that brings us down to the last item, and that's adjournment. It is now, let me ask this. Anybody have any other questions before I adjourn the meeting? I got one thing to say. I thank you all at TDLR. Thank the board for everything that you do. And Helica, every time I've talked to you, you've always offered or had a solution for my issue or problem, and you always help me. And I say thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome, sir.
And moving on, everybody have a very Merry Christmas. It is now 11:31, and I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you so much. Everyone, have a wonderful holiday.